I never meant to become a librarian. Especially not in a place like Morrow Creek, a town that doesn't show up on GPS, or paper maps, or even the back pages of history. I found the job listing printed on real parchment, thumbtacked to the bulletin board of a bookstore that no longer exists. It read, Librarian wanted, full-time. Low volume. Quiet town. Books provided. Knowledge preserved. Apply in person. If you can find us. That last line should have been a warning. Instead, I packed 2 bags and drove into the Pacific Northwest with a full tank and half a plan. The road narrowed with every mile. First pavement. Then gravel. Then dirt. Until finally, just trees. And then, as if stitched from the fog itself, Morrow Creek. The town sits in a valley the sky forgot. No phone service. No people in sight. Just moss-covered buildings, crooked signs, and silence that listens back. At the end of Main Street stands the library. 2 stories tall. Stone foundation. Slate roof and arched windows covered in ivy so thick it breathes when the wind doesn't blow. I expected it to be locked. Instead, the front door creaked open with a sound like a throat clearing. Inside was dust, lantern light, and a single mahogany desk. On it sat an envelope. Handwritten. No stamp. Just my name. To the librarian. I opened it. Inside was no welcome letter. Just rules. 12 of them. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Like the paper inside knew things. I unfolded the parchment slowly. It crackled like something dry and flammable. 12 rules. No pleasantries. No signature. Just bold type and ink that smelled faintly like old roses and iron. Scroll rules of Morrow Creek Library. 1. Do not reshelve books after sunset. If one is misplaced, leave it on the desk. It will return itself. 2. Never attempt to read any book with a red spine. Those are not for you. 3. If you hear pages turning in a closed room, do not investigate. Someone is studying. Let them finish. 4. Shelf 77 is locked for a reason. If it is ever open, leave the library immediately and wait until dawn. 5. Once per week, a patron may arrive without eyes. If they ask for directions, do not speak. Walk backward until they are gone. 6. If a book begins to bleed, do not try to clean it. Close it gently. Place it in the return bin. Pray it forgets your name. 7. On the 13th of any month, the basement is off limits. Do not answer any knocking you may hear from below. 8. If the grandfather clock strikes 13, cover your ears and do not look up. 9. If a book starts walking, follow it only if it pauses. If it doesn't pause, it's not leading you. It's hunting. 10. Do not speak the name of the town aloud inside the library. 11. Never fall asleep in the reading room. Especially not near dusk. 12. If you find a book titled The Librarian, do not read it. Close it. Return it. Forget it was ever there. At the bottom, scrawled in a different hand, almost childlike. They will test you. Obey the rules and they may let you leave. Break them, and they write you in. I looked up from the letter. The library was still. But I swear, one of the books on the far shelf had moved an inch to the left. Not fallen. Shifted. I tucked the rules into my jacket. And from that moment forward I understood something very simple. I wasn't here to organize stories. I was inside one. I'd been sleeping in the librarian's quarters on the 2nd floor, a small room tucked above the archives, with a bed that creaked like it remembered the last person who died in it. The library didn't close. There were no hours posted. But after sunset the rules became louder. On my 3rd night, I stayed up late sorting through donation records, trying to catalog the safe books. At exactly 9:13 p.m., the air shifted. Not colder, heavier. Like the building exhaled and filled itself with something that didn't want to leave. Then I heard the first step. Not the creak of wood, but the soft press of bare skin against stone tile. Footsteps. Slow. Even. Measured. I froze behind the desk. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. Through the gaps in the shelving I saw her. A woman. Thin. Pale. Dressed in a tattered cardigan that moved like it was wet. No eyes. Just smooth skin where they should have been. And in her hands, a book titled The Children of Glass, one I hadn't catalogued, hadn't shelved, hadn't even seen. She stood in the poetry aisle. Never opened the book. Just held it to her chest like a prayer. Then tilted her head. Slowly. Toward me. Though she had no eyes, I knew she was looking. "Do you know the way to the second floor?" she asked. Her voice was calm. Dry. But wrong, like someone humming through a paper bag. I didn't answer. I remembered Rule 5. If a patron without eyes asks for directions, do not speak. So I stayed still. Said nothing. She waited. Listened. Then nodded. "Good librarian," she said. And vanished. No blink. No fade. One moment there. Next moment, nothing. I didn't move for a full hour. Didn't speak again until sunrise. The next morning, a new book had been added to the cart marked Returns. A poetry collection. The author's name? My full name. I wrote a new reminder in the margins of the rules. They are not ghosts. They are readers. And some books can only be checked out with silence. It was on the 5th night that I heard the click. Subtle. Soft. Like a door being unlocked from the inside. It came from the back of the western wing, near the philosophy section, a dead-end corridor I avoided after sundown because of Rule 4. Shelf 77 is locked for a reason. If it is ever open, leave the library immediately and wait until dawn. But tonight, the air pulled me toward it. Like gravity had shifted. Like thought itself had weight. Shelf 77 was a short, crooked unit built into the wall. Always padlocked. No key on my ring ever fit it. But now, the padlock was gone. Now, the cabinet doors were open an inch, not pushed, but parted, as if something had stepped through and forgotten to close them. And resting on the floor, between the open doors, was a book. It looked ordinary. Worn leather. No title on the cover. But it was warm. Like it had been pressed against someone's chest for hours. And when I touched it, just touched it, I felt a pulse. One beat. Like a heartbeat. I opened it. The first page had no text. Just a rough charcoal drawing of a face. Mine. Eyes closed. Mouth sewn shut. Beneath the image, in tiny handwritten ink, "We know you're here now." The book snapped shut on its own. I dropped it and backed away. And behind me, I heard something breathing. Not fast. Not hostile. Just patient. Present. Like an audience waiting for the next line. I left the library through the side exit. I didn't lock up. Didn't take my bag. I stood outside in the rain until sunrise. When I returned, the book was gone. Shelf 77? Locked again. Padlock rusted like it had never been touched. But taped to the circulation desk was a checkout slip. Stamped. Filed. Approved. My name. Book ID 77-01. Do never. I added a new warning to the rules page in pencil, underlined 3 times. If shelf 77 opens, it's not asking you to read. It's letting you know you've been read. It started like any other return. I found the book waiting on the return cart near the front desk one morning. No stamp, no record of who left it. It was a children's picture book. Bright yellow cover, frayed corners. Title, The Way Home. No author. No barcode. Just hand-drawn illustrations of a small boy walking through woods filled with shadows that had faces. It seemed harmless. Until I opened it. The first page was blank. Then, as I turned the next, something wet hit the desk. A thick drop of red. It had come from the spine. From inside the book. And on the second page, a new illustration had appeared. Not drawn. Sketched in blood. It showed a child's bedroom, my childhood bedroom, right down to the crooked lamp, the glow-in-the-dark stars, and the tear in the wallpaper. And in the center of the room was a boy curled under the covers, frozen in fear. Me. I slammed the book shut. Blood pooled at the bottom edge, seeping into the wood. Not a splash. A handprint. Too large to be mine. Too specific to be random. I put on gloves. Slid the book into the return bin. Didn't look at it again. But that night, as I passed the fiction section, I heard something. The sound of pages turning in the dark. Fast. Frantic. And a voice whispering from somewhere between the shelves. We remember for you. When you forget yourself. The next morning, the way home was gone from the return bin. In its place? A clean checkout slip. Stamped with a name I didn't recognize, but a birthdate that matched mine. I etched a note into the wood beneath the desk. If a book bleeds, it's not hurt. It's remembering. And it wants you to remember too. It happened just after noon on a rainy Tuesday. The kind of day when the light never fully arrives, and the air inside the library feels like it's holding its breath. I was reorganizing the folklore section when the front bell rang. It didn't swing like usual, it shuddered. I stepped into the main hall and saw him. A tall man in a black coat that looked damp from rain that hadn't fallen here in hours. His hands were long. Pale. Still. And where his eyes should have been. Just skin. No sockets. No lids. Just smooth, unbroken skin stretched too tightly over the bone. He didn't say hello. He didn't browse. He walked directly to the front desk and asked, in a voice so calm it made the walls creak. Could you point me to the second sky? I froze. I almost asked what that meant. Almost answered. Almost broke the rule. But Rule 5 burned in my mind like a matchstick. If a patron without eyes asks for directions, do not speak. Walk backward until they are gone. So I didn't say a word. I stepped back. Once. Twice. He turned his head as if he could hear the motion. And nodded. Not disappointed. Not angry. Just acknowledging. Ah, he said softly. You've read the page. Then he walked, not toward any door, but directly toward the far wall beside the archive room. And vanished. He didn't fade. He didn't flicker. He just wasn't there anymore. Like the world forgot where he was standing. Later that night, I found something tucked into the reference desk drawer. A folded slip of Braille parchment. Only one sentence, pressed deep into the page. Those who speak are written. Those who listen, edit. I added a final line to Rule 5 in the ledger. He doesn't need eyes. He needs permission. And a sentence is all it takes to become part of his story. It started with a sound I didn't know books could make. Tap. Shuffle. Tap. Shuffle. I was closing up after midnight, even though, closing, at Morrow Creek Library didn't mean locking the doors, just whispering a soft apology and switching off the reading lamps. I was halfway through turning down the lights in the history wing when I heard it. A soft, wet slap, like someone walking barefoot down a stone hallway. But slower. Deliberate. I followed it. Shelf after shelf, deeper into the back aisles. And there, just before the northwest stairwell, I saw it. A book. Leather-bound. Old. Walking. It didn't hop or slide. It walked on four thin, paper-like legs, formed from its own pages, curled and jointed like insect limbs. I blinked. It stopped. Turned toward me. Closed itself. Like it had been caught. Rule 9 came to mind instantly. If a book starts walking, follow it only if it pauses. If it doesn't pause, it's not leading you. It's hunting. It had paused. So, I followed. Down the hall. Up the stairs. Into the librarian's quarters. Where it climbed neatly onto my pillow. Opened. And bled. But not blood. Ink. It poured down the spine in slow, inky rivers. Words formed. A title appeared on the first page. My name. Not printed. Signed. Then a subtitle etched itself in a slow, painful script. Chapter 1. The One Who Followed Too Long. I shut the book. Hard. It folded its legs back inside with a shiver. Then lay still. I burned sage from the emergency drawer, something a previous librarian had left behind. And as the room filled with smoke, the book curled into ash. Vanished. That night, I slept on the floor. And dreamed of turning pages that turned me back. In the morning, someone had slipped a note beneath my pillow. On library letterhead. No signature. Just, "Curiosity writes faster than memory. You've already lost a page." I scratched into the bedpost. If the book walks, beware the chapter it brings. Some stories don't need to be read. They need to be outrun. I woke up that morning feeling like I'd slept inside someone else's dream. The air smelled like wet paper and distant lightning. The date? The 13th. I checked the calendar 3 times. Still the 13th. Didn't matter what month, just that number. And that number meant one thing. Rule 7. On the 13th of any month, the basement is off limits. Do not answer any knocking you may hear from below. By noon, the lights on the main floor began to flicker. Not off. Not broken. Just confused. Like they weren't sure if they should be on. At 3:13 p.m. I heard it. From beneath the floorboards. A slow, heavy knock. Not sharp. More like a hand wrapped in soaked bandages, testing wood for weakness. I sat behind the desk, gripping the rule sheet like it could protect me. The knock came again. Then again. Always in sets of 3. Each louder. Each closer. Then silence. Until the card catalog screamed. Literally screamed. All at once. Every drawer opened violently, slamming wood against metal. From deep inside, I could hear the twisting of paper, like pages turning against their will. And then, a sound I'll never forget. Footsteps. On the stairs. Coming up from the basement. The steps weren't fast. They were deliberate. Measured. Heavy. Like something learning to walk again. I backed into the reading room, lights flickering overhead like they were trying to send Morse code warnings. Then the door to the basement creaked. But didn't open. The thing behind it exhaled. A long, rattling breath that smelled like mildew, dust, and grief. Then it spoke, not loud, but clear enough to carry through the wood. "You forgot me." I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even cry. Because I knew, if I made a sound, the door would open. The knocking stopped at exactly midnight. And when I finally checked the door the next morning, there were no footprints on the stairs. Only a book waiting on the last step. No title. Just a torn label on the spine. "Volume forgotten." Inside, empty pages. Except one. Near the center. It read, "You were so close to hearing your own story." I updated Rule 7 in bold marker above the staff light switch. On the 13th, the basement mourns. It wants an audience. But if you open that door, you become the next story it grieves. It happened on a Monday. Quiet. Overcast. The kind of day that felt between pages. Too gray to be real. Too still to be safe. I was shelving returns when I found it. Not in the return bin. Not on a cart. But on my chair behind the circulation desk. A book. Slim. No dust. Bound in pale leather that shivered when I touched it. The title, burned into the cover in tiny gold letters. The Librarian. No author. No publisher. Just a bookmark halfway through, made of thread braided from paper fibers and something that looked a little like hair. I opened to the first page. Blank. Second page, blank. Third. My name. Full name. Birth date. Start date. Except the start date was 13 years ago. I've only been here a month. Right. The next line read. Reshelved properly. Learned the rules. Didn't open the basement door. Didn't speak to the eyeless one. Followed the song only once. It knew everything. Even things I hadn't written down. Even thoughts I'd never said aloud. Even the page I lost. I flipped to the final chapter. It had no number. Only a header. Current. Below that, a paragraph began to write itself as I read. The librarian reads this sentence. The librarian breathes slower. The librarian understands it is not the one checking out books anymore. The librarian is the book. I dropped it. Stepped back. The book stayed open. And turned another page on its own. Another paragraph. Another sentence. Another description of me, standing exactly as I was, reading that exact line. The bell above the door rang. A person walked in. Younger than me. Holding a duffel bag. Looking around like they weren't sure where they were. On the desk was a sealed envelope. Their name written in red ink. I looked down. The book had closed. But the title had changed. The Librarian, Volume 38. There was no more me. Not really. Only the story of me. Filed. Catalogued. Ready for the next reader. So now I wait. Among the shelves. Sometimes I hum when it gets too quiet. Sometimes I turn a page just to hear what happens next. And when the new librarian follows the rules, I nod from behind the fiction section. Quietly. Gratefully. Because we remember the ones who obeyed. And we write down the ones who didn't.